We're all the same. I'm telling you, when you're making a decision on someone and someone comes and questions you about the decision that you're making, they're not asking you a question. They're actually coming after you. And then what happens is because they're coming after you, you become all defenses. Your defenses go up. And then your learning aptitude goes down. And then it is impossible to make a good decision. And I'm really excited about this series too, because I think this series is going to transform a lot of people's lives. And for some of us, we're going to have like these continual aha moments. It's a very practical series, so it will really help you in every kind of station of life that you're at. If you're in business, you'll get a lot out of this. If you're married, you'll get a lot. If you're divorced, you're going to get a lot. If you're trying to raise kids, you're going to get a lot. If you're a teenager, you should especially listen, because this could save you literally decades of pain not making the mistakes that your mum and dad made. So you should listen right up. And if you're in the twilight season of your life, more mature, like some of us here, well, you might just get some answers to open the door to have some questions, maybe about relationships that have kind of struggled maybe over the seasons. So I wish someone would have told me this when I was in my early 20s. I think I would have probably saved myself a lot of heartache and pain. So what I want to do is I want to introduce you to the authors of this book. The author is Andy Stanley. We've got a photo of him and his dad. Andy's this good-looking guy here. He's the pastor of North Point Church. He wrote the book, Better Decisions, Fewer Regrets. That's his father, Charles Stanley. Many of you older guard would understand Charles. They're so different in how they lead their churches, but wonderful men of God. Anyway, Andy wrote this book called Better Decisions and Fewer Regrets, and he attributes it to coming from his dad growing up. He said his dad had one of the most annoying habits he has ever experienced, and that his father would never answer a question for him. Every time he would ask a question, he would just come back with an arsenal of other questions to force Andy to actually make the decision himself. Now, most kids would think, that is fantastic. I'd love to have a dad like that, you know. But he said it was a simple process that his dad was doing, but he didn't understand it. And he kept asking questions. And these are the questions that he would ask first time his dad would ask him. Andy, what will you do when I'm not here to make a decision for you? What will you do? And to which Andy's reply was often, well, you are here now, so why don't you tell me what to do? And he goes, no. And he said, and then he'd have another question on the back of that. Every time he would answer a question with a question. And the next one, he said, literally drove him insane. And he said, Andy, what's the wise thing to do in this circumstance? What's the wise thing to do, taking into account where you are in life, what you want out of life? Not right or wrong. Right or wrong is like the law. It's too easy to get around, and the leaders to get around the law, but that one there is a conscience question. And it's not very easy to get around. And Andy says that question, he hated that question. It pretty much eliminated every rebellious thing he wanted to do as a teenager, just by asking good questions. Over the time, the reason why Andy wrote the book is because he discovered that God was using his father to teach him something that many people never ever get in their entire life. He was teaching him to join two dots together in his mind, which, as I said, most people grow through their whole life and never get these two dots joined together. And that's this: good questions equals good decisions. You ask good questions, you make good decisions. So his father actually taught him growing up to every time there was a question, you pause, ask some good questions, Andy, and you'll be able to make good decisions. So that's where the book is about. Every decision that you make is taking you somewhere. Now, I can tell you without even having to blink, my mum and dad, and I've got permission to share this, my mum and dad did not understand this principle at all. The reason, because their mum and dad didn't understand it either, so I didn't get it either. So none of us got the dots joined. And it's because we came out of the motherland with the corgis, with the Queen, you know, the UK, and they had a saying there which doesn't really go alongside with what Andy's philosophy and his dad's philosophy has been. And that's this. This is what they all grew up with. Children should be seen and not heard. You know what that meant? We didn't make decisions. All the decisions were made for us. We didn't have to make decisions, so we never got the dots joined. Now, I grew up, I told you a few weeks ago in Dream Release, this very sickly child. And on 3 occasions, my mum thought she was going to lose me. And so that created a very fearful mum. But it also was very beneficial for me because mum would do everything for me. She would do absolutely everything for me. And my dad would get so mad and say, stop doing it for him. And she would just do it anyway. And I thought it was fantastic until I left home and discovered something. I couldn't make a good decision. So my life went from bad to worse, and then it deteriorated. That's how it was. The dots had not been joined. So I fumbled my way through a mess, not being able to make decisions. And then it got gloriously, gloriously happy when I met Anne and we decided to get married. Because then I discovered another 2 things after we got married. Number 1, I still couldn't make a decision. I couldn't make good decisions. And the second thing I discovered is that Anne was not going to make the decision for me. And that was not helpful. I tried at the beginning to control and manipulate the situation to say, well, my mum used to do this for me, so how about you do it for me now? That didn't really work at all. And it also led to some incredible visits to something called the video store. Remember those things, the video store, you have to go there? So I couldn't make a decision and she wouldn't make a decision. We would spend longer trying to pick the video than watching it. I couldn't make a decision. And the decisions that I did make were so bad. They were so bad that I went from bad to worse early in my life. And eventually I hit rock bottom. And then thank God, God rescued me out of that. And over the last 30-odd years has been teaching me how to make better decisions. I wonder what it was like for you growing up. Did you have the children shall be seen and not heard in there? So that means you don't make a decision. Decisions are all made for you. Now, I've got a front row seat of this, Anne and I do, because we've got Anita and Chris living with us, and we've got 2 little ones, Dexter and India, and they are doing this very, very different. It drives me nuts because it's nothing like I was raised, so it's nothing like I would do. And sometimes I would say to Anita, when something would go wrong, I'd say, Neat, just in case you were wondering if there was ever a good time to smack, that was it. That was the one. That was the one right there. And do you know what she would say? She'd go, where is that? Oh, that's in the Old Covenant, isn't it? Ooh. Hate that Andy Stanley. So anyway, they're doing it differently. And I have to watch, but I'm noticing, like Dexter's 5 and India's now 11, they can make great decisions right now. And they can actually work things out. They know what they like, what they dislike, and where appropriate, mum and dad are leading them to make their own decisions. They're not doing it for them. They're a little bit more like counselors than they are parents. Because a good counselor knows you never tell someone what to do. Because we're Australians, and when someone tells us what do we do? The opposite, yes. A good counsellor knows that. So they leave these breadcrumb trails of questions and that hopefully you can figure out and make your own decision because they know that if you make your own decision, you're more likely to follow through. If they prescribe something to you, you don't follow through. You tend to reject it. So life is just all about making decisions. Your whole life is just a big decision-making process. So I wonder how good you are at making decisions. Ever bought something late at night on an infomercial that you regret later? I'm helping someone clean their house after their parents have been deceased. They've been watching infomercials. There is stuff there that hasn't even been opened out of boxes. It's just piled up, but they're still buying it. See, some decisions are embarrassing, some will scar you, and some will cripple you. See, let's just say you've got 3 payments at $29.95 for an ab roller. Remember the ab roller? It's embarrassing, it really is embarrassing. So you got the ab roller. But if you pay $29.95 and that's embarrassing. That's just embarrassing when someone discovers that. But you end up with $30,000 worth of credit card debt, that's crippling. That's devastating. You buy some shares in something that looks good, but it turns out it's nothing and you tank and you lose some money. That can leave a scar now and then. Listen to this. You marry the wrong person, that's devastating. That is crippling. And I know I have to counsel people like that. And I go, what were you thinking? Answer was, They weren't thinking. And did you ask any questions about the differences you have? No. There's your problem right there. So during this series, what we're going to do is we're going to look at 5 questions that you're going to unpack, and we're going to unpack it together so that you use these as a framework to make decisions. Whether it's financial, whether it's relational, whether it's academic, whatever, you use these. And Charles was teaching Andy this. And the reality is well-placed, appropriately timed decisions and thought-provoking questions. These lead to great decisions. Well-placed, appropriately timed, thought-provoking questions. Now, there's a Harvard professor called Clay Christensen, and he makes this comment about it. He says this. I need my prop first. Questions are places in your mind where answers fit. If you haven't asked the question, the answer has nowhere to go. Questions are places in your mind where answers fit. If you don't answer the question, if you don't ask the question, the answer has nowhere to go. It's like these things. I think about this. It's like this has got a place. There's a question around here somewhere where this thing fits. But if I haven't asked the question and I can't find the spot, and I'm just trying to force it in other areas, the answers are all floating around all the time. But you have to answer the question. You got to ask it, and you ask the correct question. Eventually, the answer finds the right spot. I think that's really interesting. So this kind of represents your brain. For some of you, it's just full of holes, just different shapes. But the holes are good because they are actually the questions that you're asking that require answers. And if you ask, you discover. So you've got to have those well-placed, appropriately timed, thought-provoking questions. Now, the good news is that we're not the only people to actually struggle with this. All through history, people have struggled. So God's got some things to say to us about it. And we're going to look at one scripture. It's in the book of Proverbs. Now, Proverbs is wisdom literature. So it's written from a wisdom point of view. It is written under Israel's Old Covenant. It has an application to them where God is founding a military nation, so it has an application there. But it also has an application to just humanity from a wisdom point of view. So we're going to unpack this because you see Jesus talking about this on the other side of the cross. This is what it says. Proverbs 27:12, the prudent see danger and take refuge. Not many people even understand what prudent means anymore. It's not a very popular word, doesn't sound good. But what it means to be prudent, it means to be shrewd, it means to be crafty, it means to be sensible. Jesus told a whole story about this. He talked about a shrewd manager, one that was about to get sacked. And so what he did is he went around to all his master's debtors and he halved all of their things after their debts, and then he made way for himself. So when his time was going to finish up here, he had some other places to go that might give him a job. And Jesus said, that's a shrewd guy. So you've got to be crude, you've got to be sensible, you've got to be shrewd, because we know that today's decisions affect tomorrow's opportunities and options and outcomes and relationships. So the prudent sees the danger coming. They see it coming and they take refuge. They make decisions not based on what's going on right here in front of them, what they see. They're making decisions based on, where do I want to be relationally? Where do I want to be financially? Where do I want to be academically? Where do I want to be professionally? Where do I want to be spiritually? So they're asking questions further ahead than just that. I had no capacity for that. I kind of fall into the second part of this, which is, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. I cannot tell you how many times I was making decisions before knowing Christ, and I knew this was going to end in disaster. And what did I do? I just kept right on going. And the whole thing would blow up, and I go, why did that happen? Really? You saw it coming. So the simple, it means the simple-minded, the naive, the people that believe most anything and everything. They get hoodwinked by every scheme that comes along. You just get caught on it. But the prudent, they see danger and they take refuge. Simple, keep going. You know, a great example of this is Judas. Judas was with Jesus for 3 years. He walked with him. He talked with him. He had a relationship with him. He saw everything, all the miracles. He was there for the whole part. Yet the whole time it tells us he had an issue with money. Money had a control in his heart. At any time he could have said to Jesus, hey, listen, man, I hear all your teachings, but Something's not right in me about this issue of money. But he didn't take advantage. He didn't take refuge. And so he just kept on going. Guess what? Then the religious leaders discovered that Judas had a problem with money. And so then they manipulated him with that. And for 30 pieces of silver, he sells out Jesus. And then he goes back. He's devastated. He's heartbroken with what he's done. He throws the silver back, but he can't be taken back. It's done. The decision's made. And then he goes off and he hangs himself. See? Prudence, see danger. He didn't see it. He didn't take refuge. He just kept going, thinking this will go away, this will go away, this will go away. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. It only gets worse. So our decisions really are writing our story in life. So your decisions determine the direction and the quality of your life. They're kind of like the steering wheel of your life. You are the result of the decisions that you have made. Now, I know some of you push back and go, but you don't understand. My mum and dad made this decision and someone else made that decision. I totally get it. We are affected by other people's decisions, but here's the thing that we have to recognize as human beings. Your response or reaction to whatever transpires is a decision. And that decision is building your story. It is taking you somewhere in life. I was thinking a little bit about this as I was preparing, and I heard about a lady called Eva, and I don't think this is her photo, but she was a Holocaust survivor, and her family were murdered in front of her by the Nazis. And anyway, she actually, after a period of time, she sought out one of the Nazis that actually was involved with murdering her family and forgave them. And she writes about it, and she says, you know what? Her name was Eva something, I can't remember, but she said, I gave this gift, and it was such a heartbreaking gift to the Nazi that was receiving it, that it did something in him. But she said, I got the greater gift for that. She said, that changed the story of my life. Alongside her, another little boy, he gets beaten. He wants to be a priest. He wants to be a man of God in the culture of the day. And he gets beaten senseless by a drunken, alcoholic father every day. And he keeps responding, and he keeps praying, and he keeps asking God. And then one day, he just decides that's enough. And he doesn't respond, he reacts. And that changes his future and his destiny, because that little boy grew up to be Adolf Hitler. Two young people, both facing devastating circumstances. One keeps responding, moves forward, creates a great story. One chooses a different response, and devastating results come, but it's still his decision, and it's still his story. So we got to realize that a response creates a better path forward rather than a reaction. I don't know about you, but I never have to apologize for my responses. I never do. I always have to apologize for my reactions. And sometimes, to my shame, occasionally someone will push the right button in me and I will arc up, and then I have to go back and eat my humble pie and say, I am dreadfully sorry. Sorry about that, but you just push the right buttons. Why? Because there's still something that's not quite dealt with. And you'll know that about yourself, because if someone hits the button, you just go off. But reactions never go well. They always make a bad situation worse. But responses create a bridge to bridge the gap, and reactions just cause you regret. So the whole thing's going to be about making decisions, making great decisions. But some things about decisions I want to talk about just for a few minutes is just to help you, because they're complicated by things. Decisions are complicated by emotions. In fact, scientists now believe that you actually can't make a decision without emotion. They don't think you can actually do it. Now, if I said to you, you're the greatest salesman in the world, you would say to me, no, I can't. I'm no good. I can't sell anything. I'll tell you what, you can sell yourself on anything and anyone. Think back to your last relationship that you thought was wonderful, and all your friends said, you know what, I don't know if this is the right guy for you, honey. He doesn't seem to have a job, hasn't had one for like a decade, doesn't have any money, he's living in mum's garage, it's on the dole. Yes, but he's filled with promise, he's an artist. You're selling yourself. You're not listening to the facts. You're not asking the questions. You are selling yourself. We can all sell ourselves. I have sold myself on things that's like, afterwards I go, what were you thinking? Everybody else, and what makes it worse is that my good friends oftentimes stay silent. The whole thing blows up and they go, oh yeah, saw that coming. Well, it would be helpful if you told me. They go, no, you wouldn't listen anyway. You'd sold yourself on this thing that was going to go. So we are complicated. It's complicated by that because there are emotions and we are our greatest salesman. When you feel like you've got to sell yourself on something, you never have to sell yourself on a good thing. But if you feel like you have to do that, you should stop, pause, and that's when these questions come in. So it's charged with emotion. That's why decision making is so difficult. And it's also surprise decisions really affect us badly too. Ones that come out of left field, ones you don't know that are coming. You know, everything's going along fine, everything's wonderful, and then somebody offers you another job and it's $20,000 a year more. And you go, that is fantastic. The only trouble is you've got to relocate your family to the middle of whoop-whoop, in the middle of nowhere, and you've got to disrupt everything, relationships and the whole thing, and then you go, yeah, but it's worth $20,000. Really? I've known people do that. 2 years later, they got no marriage, kids aren't in church, everyone's gone down the gurgler. That was worth $20,000. So you've got to be careful. And there's always a time frame on these things. When these things come, it's like you got to do it, and you're going to do it now. When things are going well in your marriage, it's great, isn't it? When things start going well, ever notice someone hit you on Facebook from the past or from Instagram? It's like an old flame just turns up. And it's like, should I like? Shouldn't I like? What would Jesus do? He'd like. The prudent see danger. Maybe I shouldn't like. See? They're decisions that we make because every decision's taken us somewhere. When you go to purchase something, salesmen know this. They know this. They're taught this. When you go to pick something up, Matt, this is the last car like this on the whole planet. COVID has got rid of them all. You won't get one for another decade if you don't sign right now. And that's the only colour. The only colour. And then you sign up and you discover that even that colour doesn't exist. But it's too late. They got your money. They know it. They work it. What about when your marriage is going along so well, you know? You've just got married, it's such wonderful times, and then you hear something about your spouse, and they do something that causes you to question. Then suddenly you've got a decision to make, and they're charged. You know, I think our ability to respond and not react, I think it's a superpower. And I think it's a superpower because I think it's put there by God to enable us to make wise decisions, so that we don't keep making bad decisions and keep reaping the consequences of it. See, when you react to something, you become a reflection of the thing that you're reacting to. And oftentimes we become a reflection of the person that we actually despise, and we actually become like them because the reaction forces us into the same space. When you react to something, you lose control. That's like saying, handing the pen to your enemy and say, could you write the next chapter of my life? Because, you know, I'm just losing control now here. I don't know what to do. You write it. And the enemy will go, thank you very much. I'll write something lovely there for you. So as soon as you react, you lose control. But when you just choose to respond, it's like those Holocaust survivors. You choose to thwart evil. You redeem pain. And in some cases, you empower a reverse in people's lives. It's a superpower. So never underestimate the power of a measured response. A measured response. Don't get pulled into making decisions straight away. You got to do it and it's got to happen right now. I tell you, that happens all the time to me. People go, I've just heard this and this is going to happen. You got to do it now. Nah, let's just sit on it for a little bit and see what God does. Let's get some confirmation. But what you need to understand is your responses or your reactions are still decisions. They're still decisions. They may not be good ones, but they're taking you somewhere. Our future decisions are determined by asking good questions and then responding appropriately. Let's face it, you were there for all of your bad decisions, were you not? You were there, you ate it, you drank it, you bought it, you smoked it, some of you even married it. And then you're wondering why things aren't going so good. But that's okay. God can still work with that. He can fix it up for you. See, decisions determine our story of life. And the one other final thing about this, I'm going to talk about decisions, is private decisions never, ever stay private. We think they're private, but they usually end up with public outcomes. Decisions that your grandparents made, my grandparents made, my parents made, affected me. They made a decision when I was very, very small, because after having a twisted bowel at 6 months and then rheumatic fever, rheumatoid, I'm not sure what it was, rheumatic fever, one of those things. It left me with extreme pain. I don't remember it. Apparently I would cry all the time because my legs ached because it was cold. And the doctor said, well, you need to go to a warmer climate. So they had to ripple from their family and come all the way over here. That had huge implications for me now. It has had huge implications on them as well. So decisions, any private decision never stays private for very long. So you've got to make sure that you just make good decisions, because you are deciding a good story. You'll either decide a good story or a bad story. And that's it. They'll be your decisions. You get to do that before God for yourself. Andy's dad was far more interested in teaching him how to make good decisions than making good decisions for him. He wants him to know how. I don't think we teach our kids that well how to make decisions young, so that those dots are joined in our brain. Maybe as parents, maybe we should spend less time telling them what to do and more time helping them to make good decisions by teaching them how to ask good questions. Opting for questions over direction. That's what Andy's father did. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to give you the right questions for you to work out what is the wise thing to do. So they're well-placed. Good questions always lead to good decisions. Well-placed, timely, thought-provoking questions. They always work out well. Now, that's why on the backside for some of us, we make a decision and you go, what was I thinking? You know, what was I thinking? How did that happen? Well, the problem is you weren't asking questions. And because you didn't ask the right questions, you didn't have the right space opened in your brain to receive the right answer. So therefore, you got the wrong thing. And then that's caused problems for you. We know intuitively that you've got to ask. The more questions you ask, the more you'll understand, the more you know, the better your comprehension. But here's the deal. Nobody likes to be asked questions. We're all the same. I'm telling you, when you're making a decision on someone and someone comes and questions you about the decision that you're making, they're not asking you a question. They're actually coming after you. And then what happens is, because they're coming after you, you become all defenses. Your defenses go up. And then your learning aptitude goes down. And then it is impossible to make a good decision. It's impossible, because there's no way you can absorb new information and new insight when you feel like you're being attacked around this whole area. It's very disruptive. It's very, very disruptive indeed. So what we want to do is give you some questions ahead of time. Some questions over this next 5 weeks that if you ask them, and you'll slow down and ask them before you make any decision, they will become a filter that'll help you. So every time you're stuck or every time you're frustrated trying to work it out, you just go to these questions, this framework, and you'll get some understanding. Now, the reality is you already have a grid for making decisions, as I do. It's probably not a good one. Mine's not a good one. It wasn't a good one. It's probably not a good one either. Here's probably how you go about making decisions. You ask these questions. Will this make me happy? Will I enjoy this? Will this hurt me? Will this hurt somebody else? What about this? Will anyone find out? And then the final one, what's my out if someone does find out? They say that subconsciously that is the framework of how we kind of think. That's the kind of grid. Now, that's not a good grid. It's not a good grid. But if you haven't been taught how to join the dots of good questions to get good decisions, that's the grid you're going to go on. So what I want you to do between now and next week, I want you to memorize chapter 27 of Proverbs, verse 12. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. It cost Judas. It's on the other side of the cross. It cost him. That framework I use all the time because there is so much. Not only do we live in the information age out, we now actually have gone beyond it. We live in the misinformation age. There's nothing that's accurate out there. You have to take everything through the right filter. So I'm continually asking the Holy Spirit, is this right? I listen to people's ideas and thoughts and I take everything into consideration, but the human mind is limited and I need to find out what's the mind of Christ. So the Holy Spirit within is the one that enables me to take refuge and say, you need to watch for this. We don't go on and get ourselves in a big mess. Now, if you want to know how good decisions are and how important they are and how they're writing your story, there's 3 characters I just want to just mention to you. What about Dr. Martin Luther King? What about his better decision with fewer regrets? He was up north in America and he heard that there was terrible racism going on down south. And so he decides to relocate down into the south. And of course, he wrote that magnificent speech that was delivered. It says, I dream of a place where my children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. And then the speech climaxes up into a point where he says, I've been up to the mountain and I have seen the promised land. And then he speaks prophetically, not realizing, I may not get there with you. And he didn't. Within about 48 hours, I think he was assassinated. I actually got to stand on a hill overlooking the actual building where Martin Luther was assassinated. It was quite an eerie feeling to be there, even after all that time. But his decision, his private decision of conviction that this is wrong, enabled him to make a good decision and ask some good questions. Did it cost him? Yeah. But we're still talking about him. His better decision is still alive. What about this guy? Without doubt, one of the greatest apologists in the 21st century, Ravi Zacharias. No greater debater in the arena of academia around the whole different religions and things like that. Man, this guy was good. Recently died. What's happened? Now it comes out. All these women are coming out and say there's kind of like sexual impropriety going on here. And whoa, man, we didn't see this coming. See, your private decisions don't stay private forever. And now his family and the whole ministry is in turmoil. And then you've got two radical things. Well, we've got to chuck everything out. Well, no, he's a great apologist. His theory and his mind work is brilliant. But the issue is Jesus didn't say, I'm coming to give you a new mind. He said, I'm coming to give you a new heart. The problem with Ravi is because he'd done this for so long, he was living out of his head up here, and there are a few that do that. But Jesus said, I've come to renew your heart. There are parts in Ravi's heart with this. The teachings of Jesus never actually got in there. And so part of him still had a bunch of darkness in there. Wow. What about Jesus? What about his decisions? It says, for the joy before him, he endured the cross. He saw you and I. He said, I endured the cross. But you know he also said on the cross, he said, don't you think I could call on a legion of angels right now and get rescued out of this? Imagine if he'd have took that up. If he'd have took that up, then the whole of humanity would have been condemned to an eternity continuing towards hell. But he didn't. Good decision. Asking good questions with the Father. Made the decision. I will endure this. I will go through this because I can see down the corridors of time all these people that are going to come and they're going to receive Christ. They're going to receive the Spirit of Christ within them and they're going to be connected back in relationship with the Father. See, every decision is taking us somewhere. And all those decisions, they have ramifications and they are building the story. We're still talking about Jesus thousands of years later. Good decision. Better decision. Fewer regrets. So here's the 5 questions we're going to hit over the next few weeks. Just going to throw them at you. The integrity question. Am I being honest with myself really? Then there's the legacy question. What story do I want told about me? What story do I want to tell? The conscience question. Is there attention that deserves attention? The maturity question. What is the wise thing to do? Not the right or wrong thing to do. That's a law. That's easy to get around. And then the final one is the relationship question. What does love require of me? The prudent see danger, and they take refuge. Simple, keep going, pay the penalty. Our decisions determine the quality and the direction, the quality of our lives. Friends, if we get this right, everything changes. Everything changes. And I believe many of us across this season are going to actually close this chapter we're on because we know it's not a good chapter. And we're going to start writing a better chapter. And we're going to go into our intentional small groups across this season because I know life change happens better in groups. Like you can inspire in a group like this and deliver information, but it gets outworked down on the ground in your heart when you actually work it out with others and you're going to ask some questions. But my prayer across this season is that God will reveal himself to us. And he'll teach us how to join these dots, to understand that well-placed, appropriately timed, thought-provoking questions set us up for better decisions and fewer regrets. I think across this season, many of us are going to go have a real aha moment and go, wow, I've never had those dots join for me. And I know some of you are sitting and going, man, I wish Johnny was here to see this, or someone else. Well, they can come tomorrow night at 7 if you want to, because we'll be repeating it. It'll still be warm probably, unless the air conditioning's done. Better decisions, fewer regrets. Let's pray together. Father, I just thank you for the way you lead us. Please give us eyes to see and ears to hear and the courage to act on what you're going to reveal to us across this season. Lord, I know ones here would be right in the middle of making very important decisions right now, and they need to see the danger coming so they can take refuge in you. And Lord, we don't want to pay the price for a lack of wisdom after the gracious gift that you've given us through the relationship with you. And I'm thank you for Jesus. And wow, man, there's a man that made good decisions that had ramifications right down through the ages. So Lord, we just ask you to prepare our hearts, ready for the next question next week. And we ask that you would help us to join the dots so that we would make better decisions and live with fewer regrets. We thank you in Jesus' name.